Hey, it's the Trigger, Rich Bontrager. Welcome to another edition of How to Rock the Virtual Stage, where we are helping you to learn how to better improve your leadership, your speaking here on the virtual stage. Because the virtual stage is here to stay. It's going nowhere. So we want to help you to actually bring it to life better and better. So my job is to go find great speakers, leaders, and experts in different areas, everything from schools to teachers to professors to speakers, authors, people that know about how to make this stage come alive. Tonight, we have a special guest, someone that actually interviewed me about 6 to 7 months ago. So we're flipping the table around tonight. Debra Kasowski. I knew I was going to do that. I knew that, Debra. Debra Kasowski is a TEDx speaker, 3-time best-selling author, executive coach, and the charismatic host of the thought-provoking podcast, The Millionaire Woman Show. Now, Debra excels in leadership development, has founded the Debra Kasowski International, a world-class training and consulting venture focused on helping aspiring business owners and solopreneurs develop the winning success habit. We're going to learn about that tonight, I'm sure. That transform the human potential into substantial profits. She has several books. I'm not going to list them all, but here's a couple that I love. The GPS, Your Best Life, Charting and Your Destination and Getting There in Style. Let's be curious, ask the right questions, and create what you want. I got to know about that one. By the way, Debra is the official member of the Forbes Coaches Council. This is an invitation-only community of leading executives, business coaches, and career coaches. She is like way off the chart, rocking the stage. So tonight, we're going to welcome Debra Kasowski to the virtual stage. Debra, great to have you with us tonight.
Great to connect with you again, Rich. It's wonderful to be here and meet some of your audience and how we can get them to start rocking the stage.
Hey, so before we really dive into all this, COVID hit everybody. And off air, we were talking about how you have now pivoted to high exposure through all social media. You are photo, you are online, you are texting, you're tweeting, you're Instagramming. Were you doing that in advance of COVID? Did you know this was coming, or was this something you, like the rest of us, realized I need to jump on this right now? What happened?
Well, I think part of it has been consistency. So I've built some habits in place. But now that, a lot of conferences have been canceled, things have gone virtual, people doing more online work, watching YouTube more than ever, just like when people were talking about the recession, people who win when the transition happens to reintegrate or transition back to a new normal, they're going to have who's going to be top of mind. So my strategy has always been that you stay consistent and you ramp things up anytime that there's a downturn in the economy. Because what happens is I want to be the top of mind, the person that they've received positive messages from, the person that has supported them along the journey, that they never had to feel that they were alone. Then when it comes time when, you never know when you're going to touch somebody or they're going to say, you know what, I want to work with you. I met a lady on an airplane one time and she coached with me like 3 years later. So you continue to put those touches out there, and let people get to know who you are. Let them get to know, like, and trust you, build that credibility, and deliver that value. It's about serving the people, not, focused on the financial return. Although, at the end of the day, I always would love to get paid for everything that I deliver value from. But it's greater for me to have champions than it is for me to chase something that doesn't give me the same return until I build those relationships.
Well, and all those touches you're doing is consistent, but they're also fun. And that's one of the things as we get on the virtual stage, a lot of people, they don't know what the camera, they don't know how to play to the camera, they don't know how to bring that personality to life they have in the backyard or at the office cooler, but you seem to have captured, you seem to have a love affair with the camera. So can you give our people some ideas of how to relax, have fun, and let the camera capture you so it does come alive? Because on the virtual stage, everyone's watching everything now.
Well, one of the things that took me a while to figure out is where the camera lens was pointing, right? Because I don't want to have my eyes looking down. I want to be looking straight at the camera anytime I'm talking to you. Some tips and tricks, you can have a mirror right behind your camera. You can have a picture of family and friends, individuals that you'd be talking to, so you feel like you're talking to a person. Or glance down at the screen where you have people on video where you can connect with them. You want to create that engagement. Keep that eye contact just like you were scanning in an audience. And don't be afraid to use your gestures. I like to talk with my hands, but I don't always bring them up on video. But when you're making an important point, here I am being Italian, and, using your gestures are still really important because those nonverbals are just as important on the stage as they are virtually.
So I stand up because I have to use my body. And we talk about it every week here on the stage. So great that you brought it up. But you're sitting down. Have you ever tried to stand up? Have you ever done it where you're presenting this way on a video call?
Yes. Whenever I do my Facebook Lives, they're always standing. And I even thought about actually standing today, ironically enough. But I'm usually sitting on the edge of my chair with my feet staggered forward. So I have my weight moving forward, that I'm leaning into the camera. So I'm connecting with people and making them feel like I'm talking only to them.
And that's a great thing. Today I talked about that on a different video shoot, that there's an intimacy factor that this has changed. There are no back seats. We talk about there's no empty row anymore. Everyone here tonight is front and center with us. And so there's an intimacy factor that's now been thrust on speakers. And learning how to play to that intimacy is a whole different thing. Now, you've done TED Talks. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between a TED Talk large crowd and a TED Talk video driven now?
Well, we haven't done the video driven one now. They proposed it. So I haven't gotten the feedback of what that's going to be like. But being on the stage, there's still, to me, nothing like being on the stage. But I can still bring the same energy to the camera as I would on stage because I let myself be me. I'm not looking at the technology. I'm looking at connecting with someone in front of me. I want them to feel the energy that I share with you. I want them to feel like, okay, she gets me. So the storytelling needs to be even more powerful on the virtual stage than on the other stage because of the way cameras pan and things like that. But if I'm doing it this way virtually with you, I need to make sure that that energy is even stronger and the story might need to be more detailed so you can really visualize and have your emotions connected to what I'm sharing with you.
Now, that energy thing is huge. Don't forget, everybody, be taking notes, be ready to ask your questions, because in the second half, it's open mic time for everyone. We have 30 minutes of open Q&A. Debra and I are going to be responding to your questions, so make sure you're listening. But that energy is huge because there's a lot of us, me included, when I'm on the live stage, I feed off that crowd. Mm-hmm. I've heard from a lot of speakers who are used to that are now going virtual, and they're saying, this is exhausting. Because I now have to bring all the energy fictitiously to a room that doesn't exist, and they're having a hard time getting that high engagement, just like you were describing. How are you finding that? What do you learn? What are you learning about not getting worn out, not getting run down, not getting run out of gas before you're done with your story?
So here's a thing that I want to share with all you. I learned this recently, and it really helps with engagement. So if those of you, I know you have your video cameras off and your mics off, but watch. Rich, I need you to play with me. Put your hands up like this.
Okay.
Okay, go like this. Turn your hands sideways, outside palm.
Okay.
We're high-fiving.
I love it.
We're high-fiving. So the times when you said turn to your neighbor and high-five, yes, you could do that. Or you can say, hey, look down at the person across from you or point to them. Then we have everybody engaged doing the same thing. Even though we can't physically touch, we can still create that energy and engagement in our presentations.
So you're doing the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Brady Bunch squares, right?
Yeah, we're doing.
You just need to have a song and get that a cappella going.
Well, and that's great because school teachers, especially right now, are trying to figure out how to do classrooms. So those are great tips for the teachers that are trying to figure out how to keep the students engaged. I've been on calls where we do the virtual clap, the hand wave, the old thumb type thing. You have people doing the little cheesy hand claps. You also have on Zoom, for those of you that don't know it, you can go to a virtual icon and a hand clap can pop up right on your screen. So
don't be afraid to use that sticky note, right? Get everybody to hold up a piece of paper or a sticky note and with a message, and then everybody's going to want to lean in or put it up in front of the camera, and you can get people engaged. So this is where we need to really start paying attention to that experiential learning and learning how we could use these platforms better and be stronger at them. They're powerful tools, and being able to utilize them to the fullest is what's going to make the virtual stage even more powerful.
Now, you're not even doing that on camera. You're doing that in photo shoots too. I just saw one recently where you were doing the post-it note thing, and it gets people curious. What is she doing with a post-it note on a still shot? So this works both live and it works on the promotional side.
Yeah, because when you type something in text, people don't always get drawn into a text or a story, depending on the type of learner they are. So the more times you share the message in a different way. So I might have a Facebook Live, and then what I might do is go on Instagram or Twitter with a picture like this, and then it draws them to read the rest of the story. So each platform you can repurpose, but make it look a little bit different so it intrigues people's interest. And you never know where people are going to find you. So they could find you on LinkedIn, or they might be scanning through Instagram and say, hey, I know her, or I know him, and I'm going to look a little bit further because all of a sudden I have this bright, shiny object to distract my attention.
Now, Debra does great with all her branding, and we talk about branding a lot. She is unified, it's cross-platform. When you see Debra, you know it's Debra. You know exactly, and that's so huge for us, especially because everyone's going virtual, everyone's jumping online right now. What are your tips for doing that branding stuff? Because you really have knocked it out of the ballpark.
Thanks, Rich. One of the things is that consistency. Really keep focused on patterns. You know, on Instagram, you got that 9-square block. Look at the pattern you tend to put. Like right now, whenever I post a new podcast, I know I have to have 5 images before I put the new podcast so it looks consistent and universal in my branding. So there's a methodology behind it. Or I know that if I do a live this week, I'm going to do something different the next day. So I want to change it up so I keep intrigued. I don't want to be predictable. I want people to say, hey, what's going on for Deb now? What is she talking about today? Or put something powerful that, you know, in a new way, leveraging tools like Canva.com, PicMonkey, fabulous tools. WordSwag is another app that I use to just change up, but I consistently I'm putting my logo on it. Make sure that the images are clear and crisp. If you're concerned about discoloration in your face or anything, you can use Snapseed app, fantastic app for just, you know, creating a smooth image. So really thinking about the lighting that you use when you're getting a picture, but to get people engaged, to have different expressions, and let them see you in action.
So that's the promotional side. We've done a little bit of the speaker side. Now I want to go to the executive side, because you on the Forbes Executive Coaching Council, that's amazing. That's like the elite of the elite. So you deal with very high end. How's this virtual stage impacting the executive world right now? Because from what I've talked to people, they're like, boardroom is boring, boardroom is dead, and we just went to a camera. What are you hearing? What's going on there?
Well, right now, I'm still new into the Forbes Council. I'm having my 3rd article already being edited. And every time one article goes in, I make sure there's 2 in the hopper ready to go, because one can get published and it takes a few weeks. One of the things that I think people need to realize is, I know here in Alberta, where I am, they're having transition phase 1. So there's still people, not as many people back in the office. Some people wanting to negotiate that they want to work from home now permanently, because now they know they can do it and they've already leveraged the technology. So I think what we're going to see here is people are going to be moving more to that virtual stage on many different accounts, especially for team training, when they could be anywhere in the world and they could be traveling once everything opens up again and still take part in great training and that will support their teams and get very engaged. So I think we're going to still see some transitioning before we see a lot more of that ramping up.
So does the executive side know how to do what we were talking about earlier? The engagement, the high five, making it fun? Or do you think they're a little bit hesitant, or are they concerned about not looking professional? Where do you think they're at? Because again, the boardroom is still the boardroom unless you intentionally change it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've heard the most is when we work with virtual teams, how we're having that either a 15-minute coffee time or that virtual huddle type of thing to share ideas, how things are going. I think that has become an eye-opener for many virtual teams. You know, or when they used to connect in person, maybe they took for granted that that wasn't as important. But now they make it a point because of that feeling of isolation. As it comes for the engagement part, I think when people have fun at the work that they're doing and that they know that they're doing meaningful work, it doesn't feel like work. And here's the thing that I know for sure. When people are more engaged in having positive emotions, some joy, they're going to be opened up to possibility and options. When they feel isolated or having a bad day or struggle to pull themselves out of bed to sit in front of a computer for 8 hours, I know if I came on and I was expecting someone to be engaging and pull me in and share with me nuggets that I could implement right away, I'd be jumping out of bed and I'd be like, hey, I'm going to be there because I don't want to miss a single thing that he or she's going to say, because they know how to be engaging. And when we are engaging, like this high fives, what happens is I just taught you something. The next time you have a Zoom video, go out and replicate, rinse and repeat. And that way I know that more people are going to be engaged in these videos. On Zoom, here's another one I learned recently. So if you go to your name bar and you hit that 3-dot toggle and you right click it or click on it, you can rename yourself. So you can put, you know, best speaker in the world instead of like Debra Kasowski here. I can go ahead and change that right now. So I'm going to just say, I'll just say top speaker. And here's just a tip for all of you. So now that would engage you to put yourself as a different name, right? One meeting I was on, we put our favorite beverages. And throughout the meeting, we got to learn things and people would answer questions that way. And then you'd get people engaged because they wanted to read what everybody was doing. Or their favorite cartoon character, or their band, favorite song. Like, these are ways that if more we get engaged with the people, it might look different in how we engage, but there still needs to be that power of story and how you deliver it.
So let's go back to story, because I'm a storyteller. I love the power of story. There's the emotion, there's the energy, the voice inflection, it's the dramatic pauses, and it's those hooks. I talk a lot about cliffhangers. Don't tell them everything all at one time. Give them a commercial break, move on to something else, and have them sit there go, you can't do that to me. And then come back to it.
Yeah, exactly. Just like they do on TV.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So what are some of the things that you do with storytelling from your side as a coach and as a speaker?
Well, when it comes to storytelling, I know that you want to build and capture that emotion right away. And I'm going to, it hasn't launched yet, but I've been keeping this top secret and I'm going to share it with you guys.
Hang up 1 second. Hang up for 1 second.
Okay.
Look at the name box. Look just what happened at the name box.
Woohoo!
James Bond is with us now.
Love it.
Public speaking training.
James
That is the
Bond.
coolest thing. You guys did it right on the spot. That's awesome.
Nice.
Now, back to our story.
Back to the story. So I'm going to share with you this special guest that I'm going to actually probably put the podcast out early because I've been holding off. I can't even believe I held off a week. I interviewed Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal, his wife, for my podcast just recently. And it is the first time that I got emotional on my own podcast. And the first time I had a guest get emotional at the same time as I did. So it was very, very interesting. I can't wait for you all to watch it and or listen to it. But both of us on basically because of a story that they had one story and I had another story that really had synergy, that we both end up welling up in tears and being emotional. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they got me and I got them. But that's humanity. That's relevancy. That's connection.
And
that's deep, meaningful conversation. That's what people are craving.
And most people are surprised that's happening virtually. People thought this would be lifeless, when instead I'm hearing more and more comments like this. There's a deeper intimacy, and as a speaker, if you know how to do that, you can really own an audience and the crowd and people. It happened to me recently. I was doing an interview show where someone else was interviewing me, and they were going to talk about my liver transplant and do all that. And they said, well, they had teased it. I have something to surprise trigger. And he doesn't know this. And smack dab in the middle, her daughter had died and it had been a transplant recipient for somebody else. The emotional wave was like, wow. Oh, wow.
Guess what? I have something to share with you, Rich.
Okay.
The story that we talk about is about a transplant.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now you're really going to have to listen, because I'm not telling you anymore.
That's why I love doing these, because things like this happen. And that's also part of the fun of doing these Zoom calls, interviews, shows. More and more people are finding out those commonalities, those surprises in real time. Again, from the stage, you try to do that. You try to get them engaged. You try to get the body language. You try to get them to be responsive. But in the virtual stage, I'm finding people are actually really doing it. Do you enjoy the virtual stage more now, or still the live stage more now?
Well, I of course love feeding off people's energy. And when everybody doesn't turn on their camera, I can't get their energy as much. As less I get, James Bond and everybody changing their names for me. So, oh, look, I actually get to see you. Woo, hey, Glennis. And that's where that energy comes from. And when you catch that energy, that glimpse of people, and really connecting with people one-on-one and being able to scan the Brady Bunch here, that's that connection, right? Because I'm like, I need to see you. I need to have that eye contact with you. And sometimes with that real stage, you don't get to have that individual contact with each person. So believe me, even if I have your picture, I'm going to look at that picture and say, hey, I'm looking at you. And you don't even know who I'm looking at, but I want you to know that I see you. And that's one of the things that when a speaker is speaking to someone, and the product of an excellent speech, an excellent talk that has been powerful, someone will come up to you and say, I felt like you were only talking to me.
That's it. That's it. Now, you just said something that I have heard only a couple times. You're probably the second or third speaker on camera that's ever brought this up. There's this thing when you're looking on the screen and you do see everyone's faces. You can see who's checked in, who's checked out. And you also cannot tell who is really looking at you, looking at somebody else. You have no way to read the room. Or in a live auditorium, you can tell if they're leaning in. You can tell if they're taking a note. You can tell if they grab for their cell phone. It's different in the virtual room that sometimes you can't read it. So what do? How do you play off of that and say, I'm still going to do it, regardless of what that box over there just did or that box down there just did. I'm still going to do this.
So one of the things that I do, because I've facilitated online for a consulting company for several years, and one of the things I like to do is, if it's a group this size, I would say, hey, you know what? Tamara, take yourself off camera. I want you to join us. And suddenly, if they don't join us, I know that they're either not wanting to come on, and they can use the chat to message me.
Yep.
Or there's just this, hey, you called me out.
Great job. Great job. I love it.
Thanks for listening. To make sure that people are engaged. So depending on how many you have in the group, we can get people engaged. And it's really important to really get people's attention and really get them as part of the conversation.
No, and that's a great tip. And I was just talking to on another video shoot I was just doing. I was talking about, if you see them, call them out. If you see them, get them into it. When you have technical problems on camera, like my light just died on me, What do you do, Deborah?
You smile brighter. You smile brighter. And you keep going.
Yeah.
You know, people, like, I wouldn't have known that your camera the lighting just went unless you tell us, right? It's no different on stage. If I forgot a quote or if I forgot a line, the only person who knows that is me. And unless you've heard my story over and over, but then I might have changed the story a little bit and it will draw you in.
And that's one of those broadcast tips and tricks I tell people. In a live broadcast with the broadcaster, we just go on. Unless you bobble a horrendous story, you need to go make it up and apologize. Most people do not catch it, and if you make a bigger deal out of it, then it will stick forever, and you have that thing stuck in your forehead for the rest of the talk. Yes. So that is huge to just keep going. You will know what you did. Maybe your spouse or that person that's heard you several times, your publicist, but no one else is going to know that you botched it.
Yeah, and if there's something that, you know, you tripped over your tongue or a blooper just happened, you know, people have emojis. Like, just do it. And how many of you have ever felt like that? Like, make it real. Right. Like, oh, man, you know? So we have to get creative. Again, that nonverbals are still just as important on the virtual stage as they are on the real stage.
I think they're bigger because everyone sees everything bigger up front. There are no back rows. And especially if we're presenting, they do see everything. So there's that transparency thing that goes both ways. We can see them and all that they're doing, and they can see us and all that we're doing. And that's one of the things people are afraid to get on camera for. So how would you coach somebody who's saying, I don't want to be on camera, I don't want to be on camera, and they're so afraid? How would you help them to get past that fear of everyone sees me up front in person?
Yeah. One of the things I'll say is get used to it. You know, and this is probably one of the safest places to do it. When you are just you and your camera, you on a Facebook Live, challenge yourself to do it 3 videos consecutively, like 1 per day for 3 days, just to test it out. If you're nervous, make yourself a little script of 3 points that you want to talk about and elaborate. Don't read from it. But just have 3 points that you want to touch on just a cue card or taped for yourself, and then jump off and pretend you're talking to your best friend. Do I get nervous even on virtual? Yeah. Because I never know sometimes the questions that will come up, wanting to make sure that I offer the right answer. But what I have learned over the years is you take those butterflies in your stomach, you put them into formation, and you let it show up in the energy that you give off to the people you're speaking to. One of the other things I want to emphasize, you know, when you are in a great mood and you bring that energy, that positivity is embodied. Emotions are embodied. They're not something that you can say, well, I'm having a bad day, but I need to speak. I shouldn't even go on the camera. Deb challenged me or Rich challenged me. The thing is, you can change your state by going for a run, going for a walk around the block, going for a walk in nature, listening to your favorite tunes, and then making sure that you're grounded before you come onto that virtual stage, because you are here to remember that you're here to deliver. You're here for the message. Either you're inspiring, you're entertaining, or you're motivating. Or educating. That's the other one.
Or all of those at once, which
exactly.
is where the real magic happens.
Yeah, 100%.
So in a few moments, we're going to open it up to everybody. We're going to go camera live, microphone live, and we're going to do that. But that whole part of the intimacy, the fun, the transparency, again, I've read several articles. No one saw that coming. This is like the magic aha of the virtual stage right now. For most people, they did not realize you could connect with people the way they're connected. Mm-hmm. Going forward, TED Talks are going to have a virtual element. Clearly, every venue is going to have a virtual element now. We talk about the hybrid. Give us a couple of quick little tidbits of how will you handle submissions for the virtual part. Because you've done TED Talks, you know that submission process. What do you think you need to include in a submission for virtual?
One of the things I would recommend moving forward into the virtual world is when you maybe put in a submission, because some of the submissions have video, is to demonstrate how you would be engaging on video. so that they know that you're skilled with technology, because there's not going to be someone beside you to do your technology unless you have a team around you all the time. But when you're live, there's not always that opportunity for people to change things up for you. The other thing that I've learned also with TED Talks is making sure that the microphone is on and working. One of the TED Talks that I did, nobody would know this, but I got off the stage and the mic wasn't working. And and you can watch the TED Talk, you wouldn't know. It looks seamless. So rolling with it, trusting that everything's going to be good, because nobody who puts on an event wants you to look bad.
No.
Right? Because it reflects on them and it reflects on you, and everyone wants you to succeed. The other thing is prepare. Practice, 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 and practice with your full energy. I took some additional training through Bo Eason, and we had this prof from UCLA, Jean-Louis Rodrigue, and he was talking to us about choosing an animal that we'd represent on the stage and bringing that animal persona and how you move your body and how you interact with people. So I'm a white tiger. That's the animal I decided that I represent those qualities. So when I want to take the stage, whether it be on a real stage or a virtual stage, I want to have a certain presence. I want to bring it. I want to bring my all, that full energy, engage, yet at the same time, for my animal, maintain an elegance, a majestic, and intrigue to pull you in to listen to what I have to say.
Now, that was a nugget of information right there that was perfect. And it builds off of what we talked about last week a little bit, exactly about there's a character part that comes alive. And there's nothing wrong with taking on the character to help you get to that level you want to bring it to the stage. And the animal thing is a great way to do it.
You know, rich people will say, well, you're faking. I'm like, no, I embody it. Yeah. I embody that persona. I use the mannerisms. I've watched National Geographic to see the movement and the turning of the head. And it's no different than, you know, I've taken singing lessons to help with projection. I've now have some acting, you know, basis. All of these things contribute to being a better speaker. It's not only the speech that we're looking at. We're looking at learning about e-learning, virtual, you know, experiential learning. So there's so many components that add to you standing out in the crowd than just the person going on the stage. The more diverse you are and skilled, that you can bring that energy and attract people into the room, the more you will be booked, whether it be live or virtual.
Stage performance techniques are huge. We talk about it almost every week here. That's one of the areas that I coach on, because you're right, this is dramatic. This is a real stage. It's not a box, it's a real stage, so use it as a stage. So it's time to open up our microphones, turn on our cameras, and join the conversation. You're going to ask Debra your own questions on the things we've talked about, the things that are still left to be asked of her. This is, again, your chance to practice. You're in a safe, loving, fun environment. So if you want to flip on your cameras, let us see how happy and fun-loving you are tonight. Give everybody a high-five wave and get up there and join us and ask your questions away. So whoever wants to go first, let's get the second half of the show rolling here.
Don't be shy.
There they come. Look at those cameras.
I'll ask a question. Hey, Debra.
Hey, Glennis.
How are you? Sorry. And you know what's so funny is that I'm like, oh, I'm going on with no makeup. Anyway, so my question is so I recently did, like, before the whole COVID, I did some speaking engagements, and I practiced. But you know what I found is that I was like really rewriting my notes, my speaking notes. I was practicing over and over and over because I really wanted to get it right. Yeah. But at some point, like, I realized I was losing sleep over that. And I think it had to do with a perfectionist. So, like, what are your tips, like, to deal with that, I guess?
Absolutely. First of all, I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I catch myself and have to pull myself back. because done is always better than perfect. Being able to give the message is always better than perfect.
Right, okay.
Because if you think of the one person in the audience, there's always going to be someone in that, everyone in that room was meant to hear your message. And what they're going to take home with it, each one will take away one thing different. So as long as you have prepared and you know that you're delivering the best on that, whatever day it is, because every day you'll have a different best, you're showing up as the best version of yourself on that day. So as a speaker, we need to learn how to give ourselves grace, but also have the grit of practice and know that perfection is truly an illusion. Because if you have what we call maybe a mistake, which I call learning experiences, the people in the audience still want you to succeed. And they're like, you know what? She's real. Because I want to be a better speaker too. Or they'll say, oh, I hate when that happens. Right? So give yourself grace to know that as you continually improve as a speaker, that there will be less of them, but they still happen, all in different forms. You know, you might forget one line and then trust yourself that that line wasn't as important as it needed to be. Obviously, it wasn't there because someone didn't need to hear it. So when I first started, I would like beat myself up because I forgot this quote, and to me, it was so important. But when people came up to me at the end and they said, you know what, that was powerful, I forgot about the quote that I missed, right? Because at that moment, I had to return to the place of trusting that whatever I share is what people needed to hear that day. And it takes time to build that trust, not only in your message, but what I'm going to recommend to you is let your passion surpass the perfection.
Yeah, that gets you a high five. Yeah, because there you go. The authentic will beat out the script. That is great. People want authentic, and they know you're going to bring your A game. Very often, I change my stories midstream. Sometimes when I have that a crew and I give them my script, my outline, and I tell them, now, if I go off script, I have keywords that they know I'm coming back. They have sat there going, he's off. We're waiting for the keyword now. And it's fun because you're in the moment. You are present with your crowd, and you bring that moment to life, not the script to life. And that's where you learn to trust yourself and trust your storytelling. And it gets to be fun. Because even though I know my stuff, I don't know how it's really going to come out always the same.
And one of the other things, Glennis, I want you to consider, like, even though we script things out and we practice with a script, if you're living the stories that you share and emphasizing the points that you feel are most important, over time, the script might change as you start talking. You might have had a conversation earlier with someone in the audience, or someone chatted, and you'd be like, hey, you know what? Someone mentioned this. I want to address this in the talk. And suddenly you're being like improv, right? And you are being able to share with people other things that are relevant, because then they're like, oh, she just got a chat from someone, or she, engaged with someone earlier. I want to be able to do that too. Because often it'll be like a fear of missing out. They had a connection with the speaker. I want to be able to ask that question as well.
What other questions we got for Debra tonight? Who's next?
Hi everyone.
How you doing?
Hello.
I'm good.
Good to see you all in person. Woo-hoo!
I don't want to put it on because I don't have any makeup on either. I think I'm
So one thing I'm going to ask you, so normally for like meetings, I have not even meetings, like if I'm about to do a talk, I have a lot of anxiety. So like, what are some tips that you probably took that help like eases like your anxiety level?
Okay. So number one, practice, practice, practice. I will repeat that over and over. Feel comfortable with your content. Live your story. The second one is do some deep breathing exercise, the box breathing, where you're inhaling for 4, holding it for 4, releasing slowly for 4, and just practice getting into that repetitive box breathing. That is something the Navy SEALs use. Mark Devine is someone I've interviewed for my podcast, and he's a former retired commander of Navy SEAL. And he taught me that about the box breathing, to really get your mindset in the game. To when you concentrating on your breathing, when someone's going into battle or they're in a place of fight or flight, that your amygdala wants to protect you, right? But if I can interrupt it, even with one big breath, I can interrupt that cycle by getting myself to breathe and calming on myself. Firefighters, police officers, Navy SEALs, they need to go in, but they know that they can't be in a place of anxiety or high fear. So what they do is they get into the box breathing, that it becomes rhythmic for them, and it helps them with their mind control the way their body's feeling. So I highly recommend that deep breathing. The other thing that, I've been to Brendan Bouchard and, Tony Robbins, sometimes what they're doing is they're changing their state. They could be jumping on one spot, getting their body rather than they have headphones on and people are dancing around. I know before I did my Blu Talk, I listened to headphone music and I was dancing around. And then when I went on the stage, one of the stories was one of the first times I publicly shared it. I was nervous, but at the same time, it was such a release. And the other thing I want to recommend is when you prepare stories, don't use your audience as therapy, because some of those stories are really powerful, but you want to make sure your story is positioned as a story that's going to have nuggets of information for the audience, not for you just to kind of dump the story on them. Mm-hmm. So you want to put in, this is what I've learned from this situation, or from this is what happened next, so that they don't feel like you just unloaded on them and you just dropped a heavy weight. Instead, you're releasing the story, you're having that courage to share it, but also having that vulnerability to say, you know what? I was so hard on myself when this happened. And now I've learned, if I looked back, that's not what I could have done. But this is about life, right? We're growing. And the biggest thing is that relevancy and people learning about the vulnerability of being in the moment and having the courage to share. That courage over comfort. And you might even develop a mantra for yourself, right? My mission is more important than my fear. My faith in my story is more important than my fear. Whatever it is that you know that it's going to work for you, that self-talk, the breathing, taking those deep breaths in, interrupting that cycle of anxiety, and trusting yourself that someone in that audience needs to hear you today.
I would also add in there, as someone that stutters all my life and still to this day, I take a big breath before I walk on stage, and I just let it out nice and slow. I also find that if I'm in a nice rhythm of presentation versus the anxious guy, because I get very hyper, I can get pumped up. But I can get excited without getting hyper and trip up my tongue. So learning to have that pace and that self-awareness. Also, I always tell people, write down your intro, write down your landing, your takeoff on your landing, so you can be relaxed. You can know I started well, I'll finish well. Everything else in between, we'll see what happens. But at least you know you start well and you finish well, and it adds confidence to a lot of the talks that I encourage people to do. So maybe that helps you out as well.
Other thing is find more opportunities to talk.
Yeah.
The more you talk and get yourself out of your comfort zone, the easier it's going to be.
Who else has got a question for Debra tonight?
High five, Nakia.
Woohoo! Anyone else? This is not a bashful crowd. I was thinking on earlier was one of the questions I was talking about. So Blu Talks, Corey was on last week, talked about Blu Talks. What's the difference between Blu Talks and TED Talks? How close are they? Because I know Corey very well, but he'll be bashful. He won't brag on himself too much. So you get to brag on Corey a little bit. The big difference between TED Talks and Blu Talks, so they can understand how to best maneuver themselves.
So a Blu Talk is about business, life, and universe. So one of the things, TED Talks is different in the fact it when it first launched off, it was more about technology, education, and development, right? So when we think of Blu Talks, now we have business, life, and universe, where people can talk about subject matters, maybe like Reiki and other things that maybe would be controversial that you wouldn't see on a TED stage. So Corey Poirier, who is the founder of this, invited me to be part of that stage, and I'm really excited. It should be launching anytime now, to be able to share a story that would relate to people on a different level. And I talked about never quitting, and I shared some of my most vulnerable, one of my most vulnerable stories that I didn't share with anybody for 20 years. So it was very powerful to be able to share that with people in that kind of platform. So I'm really excited to see how it unfolds and how it gains traction, just because it's really a different arm of speaking and different topics that relate to all people as well.
He opened up the box a little bit wider.
Yes.
And by the way, you and I were supposed to be at that same location. I had to back out the last second. I would have heard.
Oh, were you?
Yes, I was on the docket, and I had to pull out. So I'm also very excited about the Blu Talks, because it does have a different landscape to it. Mm-hmm. And so if you're trying to get on stages, those are great places. Everyone wants to get to a TED Talk. Blu Talks are just as hot, just as exciting. And if you don't have something that fits that professional model of the TED Talks, the Blu stage may be a bigger box for you. So please check that out. BLU Talks. And we can always drop in the liner notes. We can get you directly to Corey. He was on last week. So please make sure you check that out. What other questions for Debra tonight? She's nailing it. Put her on the hot spot. Come on. Make her work for this.
Hey, Rich, it's Jeremiah.
Jeremiah.
Still audio only, unfortunately. Question maybe for both of you is about repurposing old content. I was involved and still am in the political world, and I have a lot of old meeting content, and so I'm not getting into politics. I'm just purely talking content here. I have old video content that was just basically kind of a replay of meeting footage. But any advice on how on maybe some tools to kind of not recycle, but I guess the popular word is repurpose old meeting content that was never meant as some sort of virtual presentation, but to say, hey folks, we have some content here and we're gonna kind of push it back out.
May I?
Look at Debra. She's like chomping at the bit. Great question. Go for it, Debra.
One of my favorite topics is talking about content marketing. So one of the things that, you know, I don't obviously have pictures of the footage or know what that looks like, but I'm going to imagine, right? So when we have different meeting clips, or I even have video footage from past podcasts, what I can do with that, and this is what I'm going to get you to do and challenge you to do, is take different clips with very powerful punches. And then what you're going to do is you can have some still, you know, stock photos, and use that as a chance for you to speak and do a voiceover and create a message with those powerful punches and how it can relate to people. We have so much content that we create, and we don't always use it enough. A lot of it can be evergreen. You can create social media posts with one of your favorite quotes. Let people start quoting you instead of us quoting everyone else who's come before us. The messages you have are just as important as, you know, the Abe Lincoln, the Napoleon Hill. That message that you've had in a meeting can be just as impactful on a social media post. It might trigger to you to write an article where you can take past footage or use that as a platform to say, hey, you know what, in this meeting, we talked about 10 different things. Now I can break it into 3 or 4 different articles saying, you know what, and just changing up the title. You want those titles to be juicy. You want them to be catchy, grab the attention, just like the magazines at the grocery store, right? So we want to be able to use some of that evergreen content in different ways. So one of the ways would be to have a collection of different messages. Some recommendation, watch Evan Carmichael, where he has the top 10 Oprah messages, top 10 this. Now it can be the top 10 list from Jeremiah Hunter, right? So this is where people are going to be like, oh my gosh, that's Jeremiah's top 5. I need to know this. I need to do this. Start seeing yourself as the expert you already are in who you are and share that with the world. Don't think that you don't have the Napoleon Hill. I'm not the Dale Carnegie. I'm not Michelle Obama. No, I'm Debra Kasowski, and I bring value to the table. You bring value to the table, each and every one of you, just for being you.
So let me flip the table back to you, Deborah, for a second. Because you do these social posting so well. I've got favorite mantras that I post, and I reuse my same phrases. What's one or two of your favorite catchphrases, books that embodies what you do, that you say, I'm going to reuse this and reuse it?
Well, one quote that I reuse, mine, that people are like, hey, you say that a lot, is once you're self-aware, there's no turning back. And I've used it over and over, because when I coach someone, and once they have that self-awareness, they're not turning back. They're a new person. Each of you who's come on the show today here with Rich, you're not the same as you were before. You now have new content. You have new lessons, and you're not the same person you were a half an hour ago. So you need to go up and step it up a notch, because now you have things to implement, a way to see yourself differently, and to move forward in a very much stronger way and have a presence that only you. So here's the thing that's very powerful. I'm working through The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron, highly, highly recommend. But one of the things that it emphasized to me is what you see in others and admire. If you can name it, that means you have it. So you just claimed it. So what I want you to do is start to express it. If you think you lack it, guess what? Because you recognize you lack it, that means you still have it, and you need to push yourself to express it. So I would challenge you to write down 5 people that you admire. Then write down the qualities that you admire in them, or the qualities you admire but you think you lack. And you've just identified everything that's within you. And you just need to ramp it up and raise your game.
And let me expand that list for you. Fictitious or real?
Absolutely.
Because I had a fictitious list that helps me immensely over the years, and it works. It really does. And Jeremiah, to go back to your question about content, some of my best content in recent years has been old stuff that's been sitting in a drawer that I've always known about. I just had to figure out the right way to leverage it and put it out there. So there is no old content. There's just unused content. So don't be afraid to repurpose, repackage, redesign. And the great thing about things like Canva, you can use the same image, change it up a little bit, it will look fresh and new, and people won't even know you've ever used it before.
And the other thing that I recommend, if there's people you admire or people you want to get their attention, start sharing some of their quotes in things that you have read that they have written, or something that they said, and quote them and say, put their name there. And you can still have your image. You can still speak to their quote. Because what happened when I was first learning about writing books, one of my friends, he said, you know what, Deb, take some of your favorite quotes and just write your interpretation of them. That's how you can get started. Because my interpretation will be different than your perspective or another person's perspective. And suddenly we have accumulation of different people's perspectives. And one of the key things is, hey, if you like something of Gary Vee's or Rich's or mine, don't hesitate to put a nice image with a quote of ours and, sharing that. Because it'll be like, hey, they obviously like what I had to say. And then eventually you're building that cycle of reciprocity. That person that you've been shouting out or admiring, they're going to want to do something for you. So think about using your own words, because your quotes are just as important as anyone else's. Your voice needs to be heard. Repurpose, repurpose, repurpose. Look what's going on out there. Pay attention. Rinse and repeat. Success leaves clues.
And hashtag and mark it with that person's name, so it will get into the Twitter feeds and the other feeds, because people miss that. They do a lot of great posts, but the hashtag is part of the magical engine, so never miss that part.
And be consistent, right? One of the most powerful things is if you see someone's post, put an emoji, put a comment, a GIF. It helps the algorithm get their post be seen. So not only do you want to help other people, when you want that to happen for you, if you're not commenting and you're just one of those people who's scrolling through, oh, that's great for them, they're not going to come and comment on yours. And it's almost like, hey, you know what they commented the other day? It was really meaningful feedback or whatever they said. And it really contributed to the conversation in the feed. I want to do that for them too. So these are some of the things that I highly recommend that people do. And the biggest thing above all, the best advice I could give you is make sure you quote yourself.
Because that's where you're going to present yourself the best. When you tag in someone else, when you go into a thread to someone you admire, someone you want to connect with, you're building a dialogue before the dialogue began. You're establishing your voice. People begin to get your voice before they've heard your voice. You don't have to do anything. It's amazing what happens when that door opens up. There are several musical artists that I know that all began through a Twitter contact, and now I know them, and I have their personal telephone numbers. It all was that type of way of doing things. So you present.
And it's organic. It's organic. When people give a referral of another person, that credibility and everything is established right away. It's not something that you have to build over time. If someone refers someone to me, I already have that trust that they're sending me the right person.
True. A little bit of time left. What other questions we got for Debra before we have to do the closure here? Anybody else got a question for her?
I just wanted to say thank you. That was great stuff.
You're welcome, Jeremiah.
Next week, we're going to have another individual on from Soul Entrepreneur, because most of us are individuals trying to be soul entrepreneurs. So next week, you do not want to miss it. We're going to dive into how to do this as a solo operation. We are the boss, the CEO, the speaker, the promoter. We're all the different hats, and we're going to learn more about how to maybe funnel that, energize that, as speakers, as leaders. So you don't want to miss that next week, by the way. Debra, how can
I just had one. So, Debra, would you be able to share that voiceover that you were talking about? Like that, an example of that?
Okay, so what I had done is, let me think of one. So I use a tool called Movavi. It's an online tool where I edit videos, and I can put a whole bunch of stock photos together, and I can write a message for myself as to like a scripting, and it allows me to click on a microphone and it can time so I can do a voice over the images. So when I go to export it to a video file and then eventually load to YouTube, I am speaking and the images are showing up, but I'm speaking kind of like in the over top. So that there's that voiceover capability. So Movavi you can use for free. They also have an upgraded level. I think I just went up one level, and the functionality is for what I need it right now. You know, you don't have to have all the resources. It's about being resourceful. And there's a lot of things out there that can be used for free that people are not leveraging enough. The knowledge. If you even went, and I encourage you, I'm going to, do a shameless self-promotion here. Go watch my TED Talk. Yeah. Go watch other TED Talks that you love. Pay attention to what they're doing and how they engage. One of my favorite TED Talks is by Janine Driver. And she talks about how the 5 simple words to get whatever you want. And it's one of my favorites. And whenever I mention it, people have not heard of her. But she was a federal FBI. She can, clean out lie detector kind of things. And I was just so inspired by watching how she engages her personal story, also with professional story of, being able to educate people at the same time, and very impactful. So watch some of the TED Talks that you love the most. Pay attention. There is a formula in the fact that when you make a statement, you want to provide an example or a story to support whatever claim you're making. So they call it premise and promise and proof. So being able to provide, if you're going to make a statement, that premise, that this is indeed true, you want to have a story for us to believe it's real, right? So you're going to have that awesome intro, conclusion, but in between, when you're sharing a point, you want to be able to have a story, a quote, something that's going to support it, so that people can be drawn in and say, oh yeah, I'm connecting with her.
Debra Kasowski, amazing as always. Again, you want to find her when we're all done with this in post-production. We're going to drop her stuff into the descriptions. We'll have it in the Facebook group. Make sure you're a part of the How to Rock the Virtual Stage Facebook group. Find us on Facebook and join that. Never miss out on anything. But Debra, how can we better track you? What are some special things that you can tell us that draw us back to you since you know how to rock it?
Well, I'm on all the social media channels of Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I have a business Facebook page, Debra Kasowski International, if you can't reach me on my personal page, as well as LinkedIn. And you can also go over to my website at www.debrakasowski.com, as you see in my box there, .com. And you can also, sign up for my newsletter. I'm offering tips and strategies all the time, going to my podcast, listening to the shows. You can watch it subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss a single beat. I'm always wanting to up-level people's games. That when you raise your standards, you raise the game for everyone else around you. And I have a free gift there that it's a 3-part video course on making habits stick, so you can build focus and consistency when it comes maybe to speaking. It might be to social media posting. It's all about doing one thing, one simple thing every single day to get closer to your dreams. So if you have 30 days in a month and I give you weekends off, which I don't know, that might be going easy on you. But if I gave you 5 days a week times 4, if you did one thing every day, you are that much closer to your dream than doing it randomly once this week, once that week, and getting things happening so that you can knock those goals out of the park and make them a reality.
So go check her out. Again, we're going to have all the hashtags, the links, all the stuff, but really easy to find her. The best way that I found to connect with most people, go to LinkedIn. People like Debra use LinkedIn religiously. She's I am in me, I am in her. We're always finding each other. It's a very easy way. Use LinkedIn. It's one of the best portals to connect with people. Again, next week we're going to have Soul Entrepreneur Talk. We're going to talk about how that affects the stage. And let me encourage you guys to reach out to us anytime you want to. This is expanding and expanding. Debra's got great resources. Take advantage of them. But when you get into groups like this, whether it's our group, her group, or someone else's group, the reason we as speakers are trying to do this and coaching is we want to help you take full advantage of these opportunities right now, because I'm coaching people. The stage is going to come on back. This is your chance to lock it in, prepare it, practice it, ask the question, to go to the next level. So when the camera goes on, when the mic and the phone and the stage opens up, you're ahead of the game.
And build the momentum. It's inevitable that it's going to go right back up. We've seen cycles and things. You want to be top of mind, be consistent, start sharing your messages. And first of all, make sure first, you are an expert. And when people say, oh, Deb, that imposter syndrome, I'm here to challenge you to say imposter syndrome is when someone's faking something that they're not becoming. You are becoming that. So if I am in the works of doing that, I am not an imposter. I am practicing my craft and I'm only getting better. So I want you to remind yourself that there is no imposter here. You are practicing to become even better in the role you already are in. And if you have felt that calling to speak, it is meant for you to do. You are the messenger. Trust it, believe it, and just follow through.
Great way to end our show on how to rock the virtual stage. By the way, Debra dropped her contact info into the text box, into the chat box. So remember those 3 dots on the right-hand side. When we get done right now, go hit those 3 dots right now. Download that information before it disappears. You can grab that right away, and you already got a heads up on it. So thank you, Debra, for being with us tonight. Really appreciate it. And by the way, if you go to her website and check out her interview shows, you might want to check out the one she did on me.
Yes, it's an awesome show. We talk about a lot of juicy, great stuff. You won't want to miss it. And it's called The Millionaire Woman Show.
Let's give Debra a big high five, everybody. Let's all do the box high five. Everyone together. Give Debra a big high five to wrap up the show tonight.
Rich, you need a screenshot of this.
So,
way to go, everybody.
Way to go. Have a great night. Rock the stage. We'll be back next with you. Follow us along on social media. And again, whatever you are doing, rock it and go big. Thanks again, everybody.
Okay, bye, everyone.